us another day, only to scream into the night. Nothing ever tries to change, even if I want to realize. 'Cause I've been sitting here, same old ways, taking off without the same mistake. Darling, when you go away, won't be as simple for you.
Yo, guys, Old Man G here, RDS, and I'm back fairly quickly, I might add, with obviously at Tom the Journalist. We're obviously breaking news. Well, it's not technically breaking, it's been on for a while, but I'll say it's breaking because for those of you who tuned in to the show with Tom, I think it was 2 days back, I'd argue he's the first to make aware that Sheikh Jassim was basically gonna submit. If he really wants the club, he's going to submit a bid, and obviously that's what we're going to talk about. We're live. We're talking about the final bid that Sheikh Jassim appears to be submitting for Manchester United, the implications that has, and whether or not it's going to be enough, or whether Sir Jim is secretly going to be new owner anyway. But if you're new to the channel, to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio, follow us on Twitter, United X, and smash the notification button. Plays Manchester United news, transfer news, and all the rest of it and more. But first and foremost, thanks for coming back on the show, Tom. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, as always, no worries about that and everything. And hope all's good with yourself and all the viewers and everybody watching.
Cool. Appreciate it, buddy. And I just want to just quickly look in the comment just quickly. So I see Lucky, which just says America's out. And Jamie, echoing my sentence, says, yes, Tom was right. He did bid again. He said Jassim would in his last stream. Psychic, or what you called it at TomJournalist. Exactly. And obviously, my one in the chat as well. Big up RDS and Tom Glazers. Well, we're going to talk about that. We are going to talk about that. So let's. Lucky says Arabian news out on Sheikh Jassim bid. Well, let's go to now. So, Tom, give us a gist. A shout out to AD in the chat as well. Give us a gist of what's basically just sort of happened, essentially from when we last spoke to now.
Well, the first 4 words that you've got on the screen there of your title with Sheikh Jassim submits final bid. That is ultimately what has happened, and as far as I'm aware, anyway, with the offer itself, the submission was, as far as I'm aware, anyway, was on Monday. That they originally submitted the offer. It was undisclosed. It was undisclosed via intermediaries to Rain, rather than being a direct offer. However, they've submitted the offer via intermediaries with Rain, and then they've sent the same offer over to the Glazer family. And the offer that was previously there, which they made upon the 4th improved offer, still stands to this day. So effectively, the way around I can explain it to people is the improved offer from last time and now are still valid offers. The only difference is the offer right now has more cash up front, and the way Sheikh Jassim's structuring of the offers, as far as I'm aware, in terms of the process with transactions and this, that, the other, Sir Jim Ratcliffe is you have a set buyout. It's pay some money here, pay some money there, pay some money at a later date. The Sheikh Jassim offer is straight cash, straight wired transaction. It's simple. It's a simple transactional process. It's one payment. It's one installment. You make the full. You round the figure up, and the way of what I know with the process with the Glazer family is when they first set up this process, when they were sounding out, when Rain was sounding out interested parties, they stated that they wanted the figure in dollars. So if you make an offer to the Glazer family or directly to Rain of your interest in Manchester United, any offer that you put in the currency section the US dollars. You don't put pounds, euros, rupees, whatever. You put US dollars, put USD, and the figures that are being reported, Arabian News are reporting over, figures over £7 billion and different things like that. But the problem is the way that Sheikh Jassim has structured the deal. He structured it to suit an offer and then also some pledged investment. Now, the way with his further improved bid, the one right now, is the pledged investment was £800 million, which was $1 billion. So when you put the offer in, for example, from this recent improved one, the pledged investment is the same. However, the overall figure which he was first submitting was a set price. But from the fourth improved offer, the price that he put in place then, he said that there's a negotiating clause, which means you select me as a preferred bidder and we'll negotiate maybe a higher price. Now, the difference is he's improved his offer a fifth time, and now he's insisted there is no negotiating. This is it. That's the set figure. And I'm not going to come on here, as I've always reiterated and I've always said, any numbers that are out there in the media or being disclosed, whether it be for Sajim or Qatar and Sheikh Jassim, it's all BS, because nobody knows the official numbers of what anybody has bidded, apart from the bidders, Rain, and the overall intermediaries, if they're being used, and the lawyers that are working on the deal. They're the only people that know the official numbers. So with Sheikh Jassim's offer, it is a bigger package, and from the word that was described to me from a source that we've been using within the US, myself and colleagues, was it's a premium offer. And what they meant by a premium offer was this sort of offer doubles what Manchester United's share price would be in 3 years. So the share price that it's at now, if I just reboggle my mind, I think it was around £3.5 billion. So in terms of the growth projection of Manchester United, there is a massive market for Manchester United to grow as a brand. Therefore, the valuation of the club will increase in 2-3 years' time. Hence, they are paying, and they've used the phrase, a premium price. They're paying a premium price because the Glazer family have always instigated Manchester United will always grow in value, with or without you. So the way that they've done it is, we will improve upon what the share price is, and we will pay more than what the share price is. And as we discussed before, the maximum that the share price could go to in our current time right now would be around £4.8 billion. And they have insisted that they are overpaying at that figure. So therefore, you go for £4.8 billion, then suddenly you're at a massive figure. And overall, you've got the package where you're overpaying at four. If you overpay from 4.8, you're closer to the 6 than you are further away of the Glazer family's valuation. And that's why Sheikh Jassim now, in terms of what he's done, is he's done all that he can, and he's put everything there now. And he said there is no more. There's no more messing around. We've waited long enough. And effectively, I think he's given Manchester United fans what they've wanted, really, indirectly, is an answer. They want to know what's going on with the football club. And by Sheikh Jassim saying you have until Friday to give me a response, whether you accept it or you don't, and you either accept my offer and we'll go ahead, and that's it. That's the set price. There's no negotiating. There's no messing about. So if the Glazer family have been holding out and delaying, waiting for a bigger bid, this is the bigger bid. There isn't anything else. And if Sheikh Jassim's team don't hear back via the 9-2 Foundation, either by Rain, through intermediaries, or direct from the Glazer family, as I said, that communication line was already established via Sheikh Jassim's 92 Foundation, his inner circle, and himself personally, if they don't hear back before Friday or exactly on Friday at close of business, they are forgetting it. The offer will still stand, but they're pulling away. They're walking away from the deal. And effectively, the offer will still be there if the Glazer family wanted to reconsider, but they would have to make contact, not the other way around, essentially, if they wanted to pursue that offer. So effectively where we're at is Sheikh Jassim has improved upon a fifth bid, and he said, this time, when I've put my offer in, that's the highest figure I'm going at. There is a pot of money of $1 billion of pledged investment on top of what I'm already paying, and the debt gets wiped out either with the price or without, which obviously with the price, it then decreases the valuation, without it then increases the valuation, etc., over the actual terms of the structuring of the deal. But ultimately, this is it. And Sheikh Jassim now will get the definitive answer that he wants in terms of if the Glazer family want to fully sell. So Jim Ratcliffe will get the answer that he wants in terms of if he can sit pretty as the preferred bidder, which they were prepared to go public about. And then when you go now to the third part, Manchester United fans will now have the clarity. Erik ten Hag will have the clarity. Everybody who needs to know and wants to know about what's happening around Manchester United will get the clarity after Friday. If you hear a response, and a lot of journalists start tweeting and start, getting on the phones, laptops, whatever, and reporting about Sheikh Jassim, there's a very high chance that bid will have been accepted. If you hear a lot of noise on Friday, I would be shocked if the Sheikh Jassim bid wasn't to be accepted. But if you have it as a quiet, stale, low dry par sort of day, and as we said before with the Sheikh Jassim camp, it was almost as if they'd gone to ground. They wasn't talking, they wasn't saying a lot, they wasn't really opening up a lot. And then they've blown this fifth bid on the table. But by taking the way of the terms of the negotiating clause, that then pursues to the Glazer family of, now this is it. This is the end game. Because we're either going to do what we've said, all agreed upon, and we're going to go with Sir Jim, or we've pulled an absolute blinder, we've held out and held out and held out, and we've got the bigger bid that we want on the table. And like I say, nobody knows the numbers. He could have bid bang on 6, he could bid near it, he could bid just under it. The official numbers are undisclosed, and that's the same for Sir Jim Ratcliffe's offer. So the only tool that we can use to analyse where you can go from here now is what Sheikh Jassim has done and said. And that is, you have until Friday. You make contact and you say what's going on, if you accept the bid or not. If you do, great, we'll go for it. If not, then Sir Jim Ratcliffe is who the Glazer family and the Rain Group will directly go with. And talks, an exclusive period with Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos Group was supposed to be set up within the next couple of weeks, as we assessed and we spoke about on the last show. So overall, with the Sheikh Jassim saga, I know I'm just going to keep talking for the viewers who's watching and everybody, because I don't really know what's happening with Gio. He's back.
Sorry.
But yeah. In terms of the whole prospect of it all, Sir Jim Ratcliffe has effectively still sat there as the preferred bidder, but Sheikh Jassim, as we knew from last time, when he was asked to bid again, he did. He was asked to bid again this time and bid bigger, and he hasn't bid again. Whether he's bid big enough or not is another question. But overall, I don't really think now, from a personal perspective of, from insiders who said it, they, and especially with sources close to Sheikh Jassim's camp and the 92 Foundation, they've said that this is all that they're prepared to do. And if that's all that they're prepared to do, the Glazer family cannot get any more money. So the figures that have been put in place now are the figures that will stay. If they wanted to negotiate, they could have accepted an early offer and negotiated and tried to get an even higher fee than maybe what's on the table right now. But Sheikh Jassim wants this resolved within 2 weeks. He wants to know whether he's in the position to put this through to the Premier League, to UEFA, and then sign the document and sign all documentation and relevant financials that you need to do to process the takeover. He wants that be in control of Manchester United the maximum halfway through a transfer window. If he gets to 3/4, the end of the transfer window, and there's no saga, he's already walking away. And as we discussed before, just to make the last point, I said before and on the last stream, his advisors and a lot of the people in his inner circle will be telling him at this point right now, when we were talking in that sort of terminology on that day, before we knew any of this was going to happen, they would be telling him, boss, we either need to make a bid again because we've come too far to lose and we need to improve again, or we need to walk away. Well, really, he's done both. He said, I'll improve the offer, but I'm also prepared to walk away after a set date. But that figure and that fee will stay there unless you negotiate a deal with somebody else. And then we're completely gone. So the roundup is he's made an improved offer. Whether it will be over the nearer to the figure that the Glazer family want, he's pronounced to me, and that's a question that needs asking. But ultimately, the Glazer family now, if they've been waiting for this bigger bid, this higher offer, because they could have negotiated with Sir Jim for weeks, they've known that what he has to offer, as we've said. If they've been waiting and holding out for this Qatari offer, then either the Qatari offer suffices and this is the bigger bid that they've been waiting for, or Sheikh Jassim and the Qataris are just not prepared to put that bigger bid that the Glazer family want. But from what a lot of people said, they're paying a premium with this offer that they've made. And paying a premium, in my view, you could have used the word they're paying more, they're paying extra, they're paying, a little bit over market. No, they're paying a premium. And a premium normally means top dollar. And that's your final price.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks you for really, basically just telling how it is. Everyone's liked, and make sure you guys, you're liking the video as well. Like, come on, I think we've got 10, 15 likes, guys, for to be watching. Come on, it doesn't take long. Just like that button. Let's at least get to 30 likes by the end. But yeah, appreciate it, Tom.
Yeah.
Solo actually had a question, actually, which I think was quite useful, obviously, and I think James has another question as well. So I'll just get to Solos. But yeah, so Solo says, is this Friday deadline a hard deadline, or is it a soft one where they're just looking to put pressure on the Glazers?
Well, the Friday deadline hasn't been. It's not how can I say? It's not an official deadline. It's not like there's clauses and there's terms behind it. It's what's been attached with Sheikh Jassim's offer, and it's in terms of his party personally. So the party personally, in terms of Sheikh Jassim, have put in place that it's effectively, really, if you want to put it in terminology, this offer will self-destruct after Friday. Effectively is what they're saying. So, in my view, I would assess that and say that that is a hard deadline, because there's no coming back after that. So, you take it or you leave it. And in terms of putting pressure on the Glazers, well, they really have now, because there isn't any other bidders. It's Sir Jim with a partial stake, cash here, cash maybe down the line. But the only thing in Sir Jim's case is, and the reason why I've always used this phrase with the Glazer family is, if Sir Jim made Manchester United that much a success in the future, especially if they still have shares in Manchester United, then Sir Jim has got the more to gain than the Glazer family do in the long term, in terms of his proposal. It suits and benefits him better in the long term than it does the Glazer family, because if they wanted to be bought out with their shares, which it depends on the proposal you go for, really there isn't a definitive answer that you can give in terms of it suits the Glazer family. I don't, and that's the only reason why I say that, in terms of the only way that the Glazer family would have maintained a major sale, and by a major sale I'm talking a couple of billion in the future, would have been if they would have had control of Manchester United and Sir Jim would have sat in the dark in the background and funded them. But he obviously didn't want to do that because he wants a stake of control. So the only problem is it's balance of probability. And as we've always said, like, Sheikh, yes, Sir Jim Ratcliffe could come in and absolutely sink Manchester United because he's mortgaging himself up the hill just to buy it. And he doesn't have the money afterwards to do all the necessities that Manchester United want, and maybe the manager in Erik ten Hag wants. So, there is a lot of ifs, buts, and maybes, but you're going to have a resolution by Friday.
Jamie says, I know this is difficult to answer, but he says, how big is the fifth bid, Tom? Not the exact amount or numbers, but is it enough to persuade them tossers? Obviously, referring to the Glazers.
If I had to, because like I say, the word phrase to me from the US was premium. It's almost like, you go on a commercial flight, you have your coach for Americans, you have your economy, then you have like your first class. It's almost as if you've been, Sheikh Jassim's been sat in economy, then he started to work his way up to business class maybe, and then suddenly now with this final offer, it's first class, it's the premium, it's the whole package, it's the shebang. So in terms of that, I just personally believe, and this is no knowledge or information, with the Glazers, they could have negotiated a term with Sir Jim Ratcliffe by this point now, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe will want this resolved just as much as Manchester United fans and Sheikh Jassim does in terms of to impact the transfer window. So I don't think Sir Jim's going to exactly have been on autopilot this whole time. I think he's going to be cautious of time. That time's not really on his side in terms of the transfer window as well. But the only interpretation in terms of would it be enough to persuade them tossers in terms of the Glazer family is, I think it would. I think if they looked at this offer at face value, they're not going to look at what it's going to impact Manchester United after they sell, because the £1 billion pledged investment means nothing to them. What they're thinking about is the overall figure. They don't care if the debt's included or not. So really, they wouldn't really care if the debt's included. And if the debt's included or not, it doesn't really change the scale of the bid. It just means that there's more money on top. That's the only difference in terms of if the debt is to be cleared. But ultimately and overall, I think it would. I think it would persuade them to think, because you don't put in something quoted as a premium offer if you're not serious. And as we spoke about 2 days ago, Sheikh Jassim through this whole process has been serious. And I said before, when the Glazer family went directly to them and built a communication line there and demanded more money, they was taken back and they was perplexed in terms of they didn't expect to A, be directly contacted, and B, they didn't expect to be demanded more money. It's like knocking on somebody's door and you demand money. Like it doesn't happen like that. It's not Halloween. You're not going around trick or treating. At the end of the day, with the Glazer family, in terms of would they be persuaded to sell, I just think like the Sir Jim Ratcliffe proposal has always been there for weeks. And we know what Sir Jim can offer. Either keep all six and buy a percentage of each, or buy out 4 and keep Joel and Avram, there, or maybe even buy the whole thing and completely go back on this whole idea of keeping Glazers in or percentages. So I just assume from my own thinking that the Glazer family have been waiting, and they've waited for an offer. And as I've always insisted throughout when we've done these streams and shows, G, there's always been a price in mind and all 6 of the members of the Glazer family have all been in agreement. There's one price that we sell at, and if somebody comes close to that or they come directly on that, we sell and we get out now. And the quoted valuation of being £6 billion, but they want the cash in dollars. At the end of the day, they live in the US. They're going to want $1 billion each for their money. And if, like we say, if some of these quoted figures that have been come out in the media in terms of $7 billion and some quoted figures around that, well, if you're paying upwards of maybe $6 billion as the overall figure, or $6.5 billion, like you basically knock off $1 billion in terms of pounds. So then you're roughly in the ballpark figure of around 5.5. And like I say, really, you're closer to the Glazer family's valuation, and you are paying a premium on the share price. Therefore, that premium on the share price, really, you're paying close. Well, you're coming close, really, to paying a quarter over what the share price is, or maybe even double what the share price is over in terms of the projection over 3 years. So in terms of what I would predict, and as I predicted with yesterday, I think it would persuade them at least to reconsider. if not, if they don't accept it, I would be stunned and shocked if they didn't reconsider the new improved offer from Sheikh Jassim before Friday, because like you say, Sheikh Jassim's put a deadline on them, as opposed to the Glazers and Rain have been moving the goalposts every 5 minutes. So he's basically done the exact same thing, and he wants this resolved as quickly as possible.
No, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Let's just read a few comments and also get some questions, because I think once I think the big question I want to answer once I've read through his comments is, you mentioned about the fact that when you DM'd me, obviously it was essential along lines of like, okay, yes, this is an improved bid, but US sources kind of sort of saying that Jim pretty much has kind of sort of got it. But what I still don't quite understand about the whole thing is that if this was the case, if Sheikh Jassim was never really going to be even close to securing or turning the Glazers' minds around, why is it that why is this whole process taken so long? Why haven't they just said, you know what, we decided that we're going to take with Jim Ratcliffe's offer. This is the most money short term. We want to stay above, blah, blah. That's it. End discussion. Close the deal. Inform Rain of that situation, rather than keeping the whole place open. Because almost like the way I see it is almost like either this is just to kind of get a better, improved offer or pressurize Jim Ratcliffe, or they legitimately want Sheikh Jassim to basically give them the money that they want, and they're using. It's almost like they're trying to play both against each other. I don't know.
No, yeah, but like I said, with what you said in terms of, like, pretty much envy what I've just said in terms of this offer with Sir Jim Ratcliffe has been there for weeks. Why not have just negotiated, set it up, and maybe it'd have done, but it had been, done by now, or on the Premier League and UEFA's tables, for assessment. But at the end of the day, the best way I can answer that is in terms of Sir Jim Ratcliffe. The side and the saga around him is the Glazer family, when they first came into this process, insisted, and the word that was always used with any journalist, including myself, was they'll want a bidding war. They want people going against each other. The only difference in the Glazer family's mind was they wanted about 5, 6, 7, 8 different groups that were going to go, here's a bid, here's a bid, here's a bid, here's a bid. And then it was almost going to be the last man standing with the highest offer, effectively. That's the sort of saga and the process that the Glazer family was hoping for. But they obviously haven't got that. They've got Sir Jim Ratcliffe, of whom they'd previously met and knew of already, and they had Sheikh Jassim, who they knew completely nothing about, but other than he was linked to the Qatari royal family by being the son of a former Qatari prime minister. That's the only sort of news that they knew around who Sheikh Jassim was until, like I say, they made the direct communication line. So, with what you've just asked in terms of why have they not already done the deal with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, I just believe it's because they've waited for a bigger bid from Sheikh Jassim and the Qataris, and this quoted premium bid, I think this is this big bid. And I think if they don't bow out now, then really everybody has, how can I say, not everybody's won, but everybody has something to say, or they have an excuse, they have a reason, because if then they went with Sir Jim Ratcliffe after this fifth bid, Sheikh Jassim can always turn around and say, well, they never really wanted to sell. So, the Glazer family can turn around and say, well, it was the best offer to suit us because we get cash here and now and we can get bought out in the future. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe can turn around and say, well, I've won, I got what I wanted, and I've got a controlling stake of Manchester United. Therefore, I'm really the owner. Just I don't own 100% of it. So really, everybody has an excuse. Everybody has something to say. But as you reiterated and said, G, there isn't a reason as to why Sir Jim Ratcliffe has sat, if you're like in the dark. And the only thing I can think of now is when Sheikh Jassim made that fourth improved offer, Sir Jim Ratcliffe didn't bid again. And, I would read something into that personally, because if you feel like you're at risk of losing something, you do something about it. And he didn't. He just sat there. And the way how I would read into that is he sat there because he hasn't got anything else left to give. As I've always reiterated, he doesn't have any finances left. He's mortgaged himself up the hill in terms of the banks he's using and the interest rates he's going to have to be repaying to actually just bid for Manchester United. And then ultimately and overall, he's not come into this process and got what he wanted because he went up to Old Trafford thinking he was Jack the Lad, and he completely undervalued what Manchester United was valued at, and didn't go to maths class. And ultimately, but because he wasn't prepared to just admit his wrongdoing, and maybe come up with a solution, he's just gone out there and thought, oh, I'll just keep some of them in. Why not? It's the process. But the only thing that's really held Sir Jim, at water really, has been that he valued Manchester United at 69% more than what Sheikh Jassim would have at 69%. That's the only thing that they can really do. And, there is, I guess, terms and ways of thinking about it. I mean, Sheikh Jassim might, look at this if he was to lose and think, maybe I went too overboard and I shouldn't have insisted on 100%. Maybe I should have just bought 69%, valued it lower, got a better deal that way, and then tried to buy out all the majority shareholders and then gain 100% without anybody's knowledge really at the time. But you've got to be flash. You have to get Manchester United fans on side, and he did that in the beginning, really. So the best way I can answer your question is, G, I just think the Glazers have been waiting for this bigger bid. And when you're getting words quoted about premium, and as you brought up about when I've privately messaged yourself and other people that have been asking for updates around the takeover and what's going on. In terms of the US have always marketed that the Glazer family are happy with Sir Jim Ratcliffe because they get cash here and now, and then they also get a buyout in the future. Whether that's just Joel and Avram or that's all six of them, they have more to gain in the long term with Sir Jim than they would selling in the short term with Sheikh Jassim. That's the best way that I can sum that up on what I said about earlier from what I'd heard. But at the end of the day, suffice to say, if the Glazer family have been expecting this big offer, this premium offer, this is it. There isn't going to be anything else after this. So you're either going to, hold tight and you're going to go with Sir Jim and hope he makes a success of Manchester United in the long term and grows Manchester United in valuation so you get more for your money later down the line, or you get what you already know that you can get for Manchester United right here and now. But if you don't, then you forfeit ever using that offer again, because you can't use an offer from somebody if they've walked away, unless you go back crawling to them and begging them to come back to the table and interest you. And then suddenly you're on the back foot if you want to go and do something like that. So the roundup is around it is that, Sir Jim Ratcliffe looks at the option as, I've got the better proposal on the table. So, Sheikh Jassim looks at it and says, I've got the better package for myself, the Glazer family, and the Manchester United fans for the future of the football club.
Fair enough, Tom. Thank you so much again for that. Really appreciate it. I'm just going to read some comments and I'll get back to some additional final questions. Let's quickly look. So obviously a lot of people have said some stuff. So Ibrahim, shout out to Ibrahim, says, you guys are the best news. I like it here. Thank you, Ibrahim. Really appreciates it. But all thanks goes to Tom, man. So he speaks a lot of sense compared to a lot of the hysteria that's in the press a lot of the time. So let's just quickly scroll. And I see your comments, like he's saying, but I can't read them all out. So Gene just says Qatari win. Well, I think a lot of people want that, but whether they'll do that or not, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. So the Soto again says the Glazers want 6 billion, but how close to 6 billion can he bid that would tempt them to sell? That obviously Thomas will kind of summarize that essentially. Something about Edward Darcy. There's Tom, it's true, Edward Darcy. So went back to, so as a Qatar or stuff like that. Something possibly, I'm not sure. Cameron says, mate, these Glazers are looking at the 8 million pledged as more money to be bid. Hassim was stupid to make them aware of it so directly, because now they're going to be after it. So I assume that's regarding the
Pledged investment.
Yeah, so they're saying he should have made them aware of that something, and instead should have because now essentially they've said, well, why don't we give 800 million? Why don't you give that 800 million up front? Is that essentially the issue here?
Yeah, well, is the directed via the communication line? They pointed that out to him. You've got 800 million pounds sitting there, so bid bigger. That's what they'd pointed out to him. So,
shout out to United Red, who says, big up RGS and Tom. And James says, I just got what I wanted. Cheers, Tom. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jamie. Cameron says, mate, these Glazers are looking at. Also, I've said that's the same comment. Jay Monick says, I'm now starting to think the Ratcliffe story is all a ruse, and he has been used to get the qatar to launch this massive bid. That's how I see it. Well, I mean, that's what we're sort of talking about, really. You know, it just seems to be that they both seem to be using each other. The only thing I would say is that ever since Sir Jim Ratcliffe made his bid, as Thomas said, we've not really heard from Sir Jim Ratcliffe at all. His camp has been completely silent. And that can arguably be as one, because he literally has nothing else to give, or two, he feels like he's secure in the fact that he has Manchester United Football Club. He's waiting for an offer. But then, if the latter is true, you'd have to ask the question why the Glazers have not decided to announce him. That's it. To announce him as the one, as the preferred bidder. Sooner rather than later. It just doesn't make any sense. There's any questions here. United says the Glazers reckon they will. United will be worth more in 5 or 10 years. Someone is being used. Glazers, yeah, essentially what we're saying. I think it's just small conversations between the three. Jay Jockin, who's shout out to Jay Jockin, man. He said, "R.I.P. Man, if Jim wins." I mean, that is. Oh dear. I mean, I don't know. But a lot of people in Britain want him to win. So there you go. Jay Jockin, will you still be a United fan if he wins? That's the question. So final bid is 6.5 billion. Qatar messed up when they told they got an extra 1 billion for the club. I'm not sure if the final bid is 6.5 billion, but we'll see. Mo Water says, so Forbes value Real Madrid at $6 billion. Why do the Glazers believe on the epitech success will drive United's valuation any higher? Any financial experts backing that view? What do you think about that, Tom?
Well, Real Madrid have the brand, the Galacticos, and they have the history. Manchester United are really the equivalent of Real Madrid in Spain. And Manchester United are the Real Madrid probably in England, really. And Liverpool, probably vice versa, Barcelona in Spain, Liverpool in the Premier League in England. That's how a lot of people would look at it. Ultimately, though, when you value Manchester United as the Glazer family have, the whole tool that they used, and a point that sticks out in my mind was when the two delegations went to Old Trafford and they went to Carrington and they saw the facilities, they looked around, and there was at that meeting, the impression that they had been left from the directors and the officials that were there on behalf of Rain and the Glazer family was the family were determined sellers. That's the impression that was left. And the tool that was being used by the Glazer family, because Sheikh Jassim and Sir Jim Ratcliffe, they will have gone there, and all they had used to go there off of to value Manchester United was the share price. That's the only thing that you could value Manchester United at being at. And it was almost as if the Glazer family are bluffing when they want 6 to 7 billion pounds for Manchester United, or they can prove it. And with how that valuation has always stuck, they have been able to prove it. And the only way that they can prove Manchester United's worth at £6 billion is because Manchester United will continually grow as a business. And Manchester United will never die commercially unless you have a COVID which sustains for 5-10 years and completely ruins the world of economy and business. Or Manchester United will always grow because Manchester United as a brand will always attract more fans around the world. It will always bring more, Manchester United will always, at some point in the future, there will be a bigger stadium. There will be a bigger vision of the training facilities. We know about the price of players now is going up, especially with the new Saudi league, which is being invested £20 billion by PIF into their own league for their own nation. So the price of football is going up. And that's why the Glazer family can use the marketing around Manchester United to demand £6 billion. It doesn't mean that any finance, and I'll be honest with you, I've spoken to financial experts, I've spoken to friends who are in finance, and myself being in business, I know how to value something. As being a businessman myself, you know how to value something. So the way that Manchester United can be valued at, the share price probably doesn't lie, because for me, the way how I look at it, Chelsea, and the best example I can use, Chelsea, for example, as a football club, were valued at £3 billion. Liverpool, as a football club, were valued at £4 billion, and that's when Liverpool was winning the Premier League, competing in the Champions League. That's that sort of model when the club's on the up and there's an upward trajectory. But when there's a downward trajectory, like Roman Abramovich, for example, where he had to sell, the price is only going to come down. Whereas success, if you sustain it, the price is always going to go up. And the way I would say it, and the best way I can answer that question is, would somebody buy Manchester City Football Club for £6 billion, even with the success that they have right now?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Would somebody pay £6 billion for Manchester United? Because as a brand, they are still ahead of Manchester City, and they have the history and legacy behind them as a football club. That's the best way that I can probably say that. In terms of somebody would pay £6 billion for Manchester United. Like, you could go to Elon Musk, you could go to, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, whoever in the world, and say, would you say in your lifetime, even if you weren't to do it, would you ever pay £6 billion for Manchester United? And if they knew what Manchester United was as a historical club, one of the biggest in England, if not the biggest, would you buy it for £6 billion? And they'd probably say, yeah, because the competitors around them are valued sufficiently lower. So therefore, Manchester United has to be the biggest valued. And the only way that the Glazer family can demand that much money for Manchester United is the future and the progression of the club. And like I say, you had a new stadium in, you had a training facility, you get all of the different teams, because women's football's on the rise in terms of it. You get the best young players to come to your club, etc., etc., etc. Manchester United, probably maybe in 10 years, would be worth, it might be a double-digit billion football club. It can happen. Real Madrid, when they finish that stadium and they finish the improvements on the Bernabeu, they're going to be raking it in. Let's be honest. They are going to be making all of that money that they used to invest in that new stadium will be back within 3 years. Within 6 years, they'll be hitting record profits, and they'll probably be at an £8 billion club or something ridiculous like that. But financial experts, as I've always insisted, the max that they ever valued Manchester United at was £4.8 billion. And that's if Manchester United was competing, say, with Manchester City at the rate that Manchester City are as a football club. Brilliant football operations, recruitment, highest level operating, sponsorship deals, the works. That's if Manchester United was at their peak of their powers and the best. But based upon where they are right now, the valuation is £3.5 billion. That's it, as a football club, which for Manchester United is not. And like you say, with the Glazer family's valuation, they double that valuation of what they want, essentially.
I mean, so that's a bottle that says that wouldn't the value keep dropping with United being a yo-yo Champions League club and very old facilities? I mean, I suspect that if Manchester United continue to be out of the Champions League, then that would happen. I mean, what do you think?
Well, it depends. To be honest with you, it depends on the level of investment that goes into football clubs. Because, as we said before, and I'll just reiterate and go over it again, the way FFP works is it's not so much as a club owner can come in and bankroll as much money as they want. The way FFP works, it regulates the money that you generate. So the most money that you generate as a football club dictates and determines the money that you can spend on infrastructure, transfers, different, projects and products that you want to engage with your football club. So wouldn't the valuation of Manchester United drop over the years if they're not in the Champions League and the facilities keep the way that they are?
Yeah.
Probably so. Maybe so. The team performance, as much as Manchester United are a big brand, Manchester United as a football club are nothing without the team, because
Cool.
you wouldn't be a football club. You would just be a brand. You would literally just be like an Apple. You would be like an Amazon. You'd just be a company. Whereas you're a football club, so you're always going to be productive. You're always going to be, future thinking forward.
Yeah.
And Manchester United, even under the Glazer family, have had developers, the same developers that designed Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, assess Manchester United in terms of the work that they needed done. And the developers at the time, which was, I think it was 18 months ago when they drawed up the plans, but the Glazer family obviously weren't willing to invest that sort of money. They advised the Glazer family, build a stadium from scratch, knock down Old Trafford and build a brand new stadium, no matter the cost. And the valuing up of it they valued it up at 92,000 capacity stadium for a new Old Trafford would have cost over £2 billion, for which the Glazer family were never going to pay. And when you factor in Spurs' stadium, which I think is 60,000 or just over, when you factor in that cost $1 billion, I mean, you can see the figures and the rates. So the valuation, it depends on the team. That's what I'm saying.
Sorry to interrupt you. I mean, this is why. I mean, this is the thing. This is why I keep on telling people. It's just like, the anti-Qatar. I just think sometimes I'm just like, so, and I'm not, and I don't want to pay to, divide families, etc. But what I don't understand is that are you honestly telling me, for those who are pro Sir Jim, that Sir Jim Ratcliffe, after basically mortgaging it out and putting the debt onto Ineos, is going to have the money to develop a stadium? Like, because people are so focused on, he's going to improve the play. Like, quite frankly, I don't think we're going to be competing with City for quite some time anyway, irrespective of what the local Manchester City hopefuls think. Because we've got a British owner that puts the Manchester back in Manchester United, whatever that means. But the actual investment, the long-term thinking of the development of the stadium, the women's team, etc., the increased capacity, those things I think are very important. I just don't see how. Am I wrong in thinking that that basically if Sir Jim wins, that the stadium is not going to even be even considered, if that makes any sense, given where his money is coming from.
Yeah. No, in terms of with Sir Jim and the investment sort of project and plan, there isn't really that much, plan behind it, because in terms of him, because he didn't hire the developers, he doesn't know the project that they had developed or the prototype that they had worked upon. Daniel Levy, I guess, people have their perceptions around him. I mean, he managed to build a new stadium from scratch. In terms of, he's very shrewd about the money that he wants to invest within things, and same thing with Enoch in terms of Spurs. But they still built a new stadium which valued at £1.1 billion. So really, you can see it for what it is. I mean, the timing is there. So at the end of the day, I look at that and I look at the offers that were on the table in terms of the two parties, and I look at it especially with what Sir Jim's thinking. And as I pointed out with that point plan was, make Manchester United a global success commercially, then the investment for players and the investment into the women's team for the first 3 seasons, there is enough money to invest for the first 3 seasons. That's what we know in terms of that. And then it's funny enough, at that time, around 3 seasons and 3 years away, he would be looking to buy the Glazer family out. So as you say, the stadium, there is not really a clause around the stadium. We've not heard much around what Sir Jim plans to do with the stadium. Either you as a fan, what journalists have reported, or even myself. There hasn't been anything regarding the stadium as much as there has been regarding the debt. There hasn't been any news on what he's going to do with the debt, apart from in the beginning, before he even entered the process, when he was really the only person that was interested in buying United, even though there wasn't a process set up to buy it. was, I'm just going to put it on Ineos's books. But
Mm.
are you going to put all of it, some of it, majority of it? Like, what? How much are you going to put on? So, with the stadium, I personally don't know what he would do. Me personally, I think he would go for the low cost effective route, and that would be just to redevelop maybe a couple of tiers and stands and increase the capacity. I don't really think he'd do much else personally.
Jeez, yeah. Well, I mean, it's all, yeah. It's sad. I mean, I don't know what else until we get official word from it. But the fact that this could potentially just sort of be, essentially a Glazer Mark II, with okay, we can't really do development, we don't have the money to really invest in anything, so we'll just do a half-ass job at somewhat improving the stadium capacity, even though the stadium itself looks like it's falling apart from the seams. And we might get a little bit more money to the women's team. It's just, yeah, it's disappointing, but it is what it is. Yeah. Final question, because I know you have to head off, Tom. So thanks for putting that in. Appreciate it. I guess what I'll say is this. Do you? How can I put this in this way? Do you think that there is any possible way, that Sheikh Jassim is the new owner of Manchester United, or do you think it's impossible at this point? Oh, sorry. Oh, I 2 minutes. Right. See, he's going to come back in 2 minutes. Sorry. Right. Okay. Well, while I'm waiting for Tom is coming back, but while he comes back, let me just quickly read some of your comments while I wait for Tom to come back. Let's have a quick look. Okay. So I'll start with Domo Jones. So Domo Jones says, "Parasites out of Qatar will support the club." Lucky Singh says, "United Red could care less about owning United if I had cash up front." Shout out to King Stash in the chat, man. Hope you're doing well, buddy. Thank you very much for tuning in. Demo Jones again, who says, "If the Glazers remain in long, Man United brand will be damaged for good. Old Trafford will not be developed and continue to rot and fall apart." Yeah, I mean, I think in the long run that will be the case. I don't disagree with that. Is that you back, Tom?
Yeah, I'm back.
Cool. Yeah, so I was just saying, so I'll just quickly with that one. If United, if Jassim really wanted it, he would have come out the shadows with a new bid. I mean, the bids obviously are private, so he's got to stay in the shadows if that makes any sense, So, but yeah, I mean, the United was essentially asking what I was thinking, like, what is, like, as obviously journalists and from what you know, like, what do you think is your final opinion? How do you feel like this will eventually plan out, basically, Tom? Oh, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. So, apologies. Go on.
No problem. No, I was just saying, like, how do you feel like this will eventually plan out? Like, do you think that this bid will be enough? Do you think that the glaze will be turned? Do you think it's nonsense? So Jim has it. Do you think that this could continue to drag on even further, with the Glazers wanting to just sort of get more and more and more and more money out of it? Like, how do you see that this saga in the next coming days turns out?
They've accepted the offer that's on the table now to be bought out in the short term. If they're wanting a short-term fix and solution to their problem, which is Manchester United Football Club, and needing to either get investment in or fully sell, if they want a short-term solution, they have to go with Sheikh Jassim. If they want money, they want all the money up front now because they know what they can get from Manchester United right now, then they will go with Sheikh Jassim. But if they are in it for the long haul, they're prepared to take a gamble and a risk on Sajim, thinking that he's going to, if you like, do a Donald Trump, make Manchester United great again rather than America, then, I mean, I don't really see the, thinking behind the Sir Jim Ratcliffe bid, because he's mortgaging himself really up the house just to get in the door. And really, I don't think, me personally, he's got the major investment that Manchester United fans are are expecting and hoping for. I don't feel as if Sir Jim Ratcliffe's going to come in here and maybe revolutionise Manchester United in the way that Sheikh Mansour did with Manchester City. You know, the best training facilities, you know, sporting directors, and then we ultimately land on the right manager that, you know, takes us forward like they have done in Pep Guardiola. And there's too many, you know, moving parts in terms of what's been going on, because, as I said before, privately, when I'd heard the knowledge around Sir Jim was preferred bidder, then Sheikh Jassim made another bid. When he had been, you know, informed that Sir Jim Ratcliffe was going to be announced publicly as the preferred bidder, he's now put in a final bid. The only thing I can see is, from Sheikh Jassim's perspective, there's either two ways that two reasons why he's put this bid in. Either he's really serious about wanting to buy the football club, which is my personal opinion as to why I think he has done this bid, from what I've heard around the background of him, or he's done this in terms of, if they don't accept it, well, I did all that I could. And with me putting it as a final offer, I've got a way out, and I've got a way to come out of this with some face, really. I can quit this process and quit the whole, you know, section, knowing that I did all that I can, and the fans and the supporters that were rallying behind me know that I did all that I could, and that all that I was prepared to do in terms of trying to acquire the football club. But from if I had to give a personal prediction, and I know this sounds pretty bad in terms of maybe opinions and other minds that are thinking in the chat, but whenever I've made a prediction really in this thing, I don't know, you know, the last time that we spoke obviously about Sheikh Jassim in terms of him bidding again and some things like that, the only thing I would look at in terms of the process overall is, I don't believe that the bid made by Qatar is sufficed enough for the Glazer family to say we'll fully sell now. That's just what I'm predicting, because I think they could have wrapped the whole process up and they could have made a bigger bid a couple of weeks in, just as much as the Glazer family have waited for this bigger bid to come in. And even though it's a premium bid, I just think the Glazer family are that shrewd and stubborn that even if you miss their valuation by 100 million, I still think it means something to them to have that extra 100 million. And I don't believe, anyway, from what I've heard and from what has been appealed, I don't personally believe that he has hit the £6 billion mark. I think he's come as close to it as that he would have wanted to, maybe even than what he was willing and prepared to do so when he first entered the process. I think he's gone out on an arm and a leg to do what he can to get it. But ultimately, I just look at it from the bigger picture and perspective. I think that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has been privately the preferred bidder, and now is prepared to, they're prepared to go public with him for the last couple of weeks. And I just look at that and I think the Glazer family basically get what they wanted 18 months ago, which when they went to Apollo, 8 to 16 months ago, when they went to Apollo Investment in the US and insisted that they wanted 4 siblings to be bought out, and they'll give Apollo Investment a minority stake in Manchester United, for which the terms couldn't be agreed upon. Whereas now Sir Jim Ratcliffe is essentially proposing that, what they wanted. So either their minds and opinions have changed since then, or the Glazer family have ultimately, got what they wanted maybe coming into this process in terms of selling Manchester United. But the thing that I always go back to, just as the final point I'm going to make in terms of my own opinion, is the Glazer family, when they came into this, they used the phrase strategic alternatives. They didn't use the word partial sale, full sale, investment. They used strategic alternative, which opened the door for everything in terms of all of the different groups who wanted to come in and can make an offer. They were prepared to listen to all offers, no matter the size, the percentage, the scale, or what they planned to do with the club after they bought it. It was about them and what they insisted upon. And for me, I don't personally believe that the Qatari offer will be suffice enough to change the Glazer family's minds to sell in the short term when they can hold out with Sajim and potentially get more for their money in the long term. Age is on their side. They've got a lot of progression behind them, and as the old saying goes, especially maybe with the Glazer family and Sir Jim Ratcliffe's, difference in age, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Maybe they can in Sir Jim Ratcliffe's case, unfortunately, maybe for Manchester United fans. But I just believe, anyway, from my personal opinion, I don't think the Sheikh's offer will suffice what the Glazer family want, because I think they want 6. And if he's not bid 6, which I think would have been either predicted, reported by somebody by now, even if they don't know the official figures, I just don't believe that the Glazer family are going to warm to it, me personally. And I don't think they're going to warm to the fact of that he's now putting an exit clause in terms of, well, if he doesn't get the club, he can save his own skin, really, and save face. But ultimately, he's got an exit route. The Glazer family have, a way of staying on, potentially. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe has a way of getting in. So really, everybody has something, even if it's not something that they first insisted upon getting, really. So the only thing I can say with it is Sheikh Jassim can come out of this with some face. Whereas once Sir Jim Ratcliffe gets in the door, he better have a stomach for it. That's all I'll say in terms of that, because the Manchester United fans, they, as much as people say, the saying of they can forgive, but they can never forget. I don't think they'll do either of these things with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. I don't think they'll forgive him, and I don't really think they'll ever forget, because a lot of people have had flashbacks. Will have flashbacks of 2005 when the Glazer family first came into this club. In terms of somebody was a bit shady, a bit different. They didn't have a major background behind them, and really, they weren't Manchester United fans when they came in. And Sir Jim, throughout this whole process, has insisted he's a Manchester United fan, but he's never had the backup to prove it. That's just one of the things that I look at it. But for me, personally, the better offer on the table for the future of Manchester United, and I don't think anybody needs me to say it, is the Sheikh Jassim offer. Regardless of morals and the human rights, if we're talking just based on football, Sheikh Jassim's offer is the offer that does everything that a lot of Manchester United fans have been pleading for in the future. Whereas with Sir Jim's offer, it's primarily based of it's all that the Glazer family want. It's what they wanted 8 to 16 months ago, and they have the option again here and now.
Quick one, Tom. How much time do you have left before approximately? So just I've noticed we've got more viewers still coming in, so I might get some questions. But do you have much time?
Yeah. I've got time left. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Good. So just a few, so one thing I want to answer, guys. If you do have questions for Tom, please put them in the chat. We've got almost 80 people watching, so please like the video if you're new. It literally doesn't cost a long. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Like the video, it helps with the algorithm and goes a long way. So so please, and make sure you follow Tom on TomJournalist, TomJournalist1 on Twitter. So, but yeah, subscribe if you're new to the channel, like the vid, it goes a long way. Just one quick thing about the so do you think that the manner in which Sir Jim is acquiring the money to buy Manchester United, do you feel that this actually potentially can put Manchester United in some financial risk long term?
Maybe not so much Manchester United, but himself. So effectively, it does affect Manchester United because he would be the owner, but it doesn't because it's not on Manchester United. And the whole process around with Sir Jim is, and the best way I can describe it was, when Chelsea was available on a file sale, he had £1.75 billion of his own money to invest, which he was going to use his own money to as a pledged investment figure to invest in Chelsea. But he was borrowing the £2.5 billion that it would have taken to actually buy Chelsea. So he was trying to get loans just to buy Chelsea, which is on a smaller scale in terms of acquiring a takeover for a football club, rather than Manchester United. And really and ultimately, overall, he's had to cut a deal because he doesn't have the money. People came into this process and they looked at his net worth and they thought, do you know what? He might have a couple of billion lying around this, that the other. He's got a lot of investments. That's the only thing I can say with Sir Jim Ratcliffe is he invests a lot of money into different projects and different things. And his main benefactor of what he invests a lot of his money in is Ineos. And the only other thing I can really, I guess, give the gist of in terms of would it put Manchester United in trouble? Probably not. But the only thing that it could put you into trouble is if he wanted to take a loan out in terms of to build a new stadium. I just don't see where, if he spent that much money to buy the club, I don't see him putting that money to build a new stadium or redevelop a new stadium, either on himself or on his own company with Ineos. That's just what I believe anyway. I don't think he would do that. If you spent £6 billion in a football club or upwards of that figure to then have ultimate control and have nobody else in your ear and say anything, I think you're going to want to do whatever the hell you want, really. Whether Manchester United fans like him or not, I think he's going to do, and he's going to operate in whatever way he wants. And if he wants to dump money on Manchester United, then if he's got the stomach to take a revolt and a campaign against him, then I think he will. And the only, I guess, way that I can define that is he's taken a revolt and he's taken a lot of hatred and flack from Nice supporters in France, of whom have protested against his ownership, and he's not even been there, over 4 years yet. He's coming. I think he's coming up to his 4th year of ownership of Nice in, I think it's in October or November time. So he's not even been in the door long there, and they already want him out. And that's on a much lower scale than what Manchester United costs. And ultimately, as I've always said, he never values a Premier League football club. He doesn't value them in terms of multi-billions. He just doesn't. And at the end of the day, if he insists that Manchester United's his boyhood club and it always has been, then you'd expect him to have some sort of an invested interest. And an invested interest would be to make Manchester United the best team that he can. And the only thing I can say, because he's taken a lot of flack in terms of the way he's gone about this, and even after he gets rid of the three, all the Glazer family members in 3, 4, 5 years' time, like, Manchester United fans are still going to remember how you came in. And really, it's not what people think about you when you come in. It's what they think about you when you leave. And the Glazer family, when they came in, they didn't care what Manchester United thought about them. But when they leave the door, they're obviously leaving a bad impression upon Manchester United fans. But that they've had the stomach for that for 18 years. They're a family. There's 6 of them together. They can, grovel over each other. They have people to talk to and things like that. So Jim is a one-man band. He's on his own. And I don't think he's going to sleep pretty at the age that he's at. And I don't know about his, health conditions and certain things like that. I don't think he's going to sleep easy at all.
Well, actually, Tom, the fact you mentioned that, there's because the question actually got from my friend said, what happens after the owner dies? Because Glazers or Ratcliffe got like 10 years maximum. Well, I presume at some point the Glazers will be bought out, but that is an interesting question. Like, because presumably, I don't know. Because we asked this question, but inheritance was actually a key thing because bearing in mind it was Malcolm Glazer that bought Manchester United initially, and then obviously gave it to his children, the Glazer family, to then run. Obviously, what happened now? Is there something to be said about? Do people know about because the Ratcliffe family, as it were? Like, does the club go as is the club owned by Ineos? Would it be a bunch of shareholders? What's the lookout here with regards to if the Ratcliffe were to pass away, etc. Who actually who inherits Manchester United? Is it
It would be Ineos stakeholders because Ineos is the people who's putting up the cash via Sir Jim Ratcliffe's command because he's the biggest stakeholder within Ineos. So that's the only way that I can do it. And look, he's had to get a lot of the Ineos stakeholders on side to let him do this. And there's two sides to Ineos. There's the petrochemical business and company, and there's Ineos Sport. They're the same company, but because they're funded by the same money, but they're just with two different objectives. One on making money in terms of it, and one's on investing in sports and you know, different ventures in terms of the sports market. So the way I know of it anyway with Sir Jim is, if he was to, you know, ultimately, and we don't like to speculate about these things, but there was a situation where he wasn't here, the ownership of Manchester United would go to the main majority stakeholder. Whoever has the next highest stake within Ineos would then gain control of Manchester United, unless there's a contestment within his will that he puts it, as like you said with Malcolm Glazer, and it falls to his children, or I don't know, he wants to give it to, you know, a family friend or somebody like that. He has somebody in mind that he wants to pass it over to. Then then it would go to whomever he's legally put it on a contract to state that it goes to them. But if no such contract exists and everything, then Sir Jim Ratcliffe would ultimately, his ownership would then be going to the nearest stakeholders within Ineos, which whomever that is, I don't know. I'd have to go and do the research and the background check on it. But the only situation is you have somebody there who might not have been on board with buying Manchester United in the first place. Or you might have somebody who's, God forbid to say it, they might not even be a Manchester United supporter. Like, you could have a situation where there might be a Liverpool supporter, Manchester City, like, you could have that sort of geography in that situation. So there is a process and there is a due course to follow, but overall, you know, that's how it would be assessed out. It would go to Ineos' majority stakeholder.
Just another question. I mean, Mo makes this comment about that there'll be a hugely negative fan reaction if the Glazers don't name as owners. Is the opinion of the fan base being spoken about at all during the process? And I just want to add to that because, to be honest, I partially actually disagree in that. While I think there will be a negative, I think from what I've noticed anyway, I think a lot of the negative fan reaction has come from maybe online or maybe non-UK based fans. But from what I've seen in the British media, from what I've seen by local sorts of fans, from what I've seen anyway, the perception is that okay, yes, you know, well, initially before Sir Jim talked about the Glazers, it was like, yeah, you know, I prefer Sir Jim because Qatar, human rights issues, etc., etc. I don't want to have this backing thing on my. I don't want to be known as a state backing club, you know, which quite frankly I don't really get, because it's kind of like, if okay, you know, if you don't want to stay backing, that's fine, but at the end of the day, if you look at pretty much where football is going right now, that's where it's going. So you can't on the one hand say that you want Manchester United to compete for the highest trophies, win Champions Leagues and Premier Leagues, and at the same time also, but that's a separate thing. But you know, when the Glazers were announced, was Jim Ratcliffe sort of thing, there was still a lot of, I would argue, local fans that said, well, at the end of the day, he's going to buy out them in a few years' time. So, you know, they're still going. But the point I'm trying to make is that, like, to Mo, and maybe, you know, Tom, you can share your thoughts about it, whether there's an impact, is that I don't think the visceral reaction to the Glazers being there is really going to be reaction. So it's really going to be as visceral as you think. Online, it might be, but I highly doubt you're going to get the Glazers out protest or anything like that. But the description, I generally think it's just going to be, okay, so Jim, and see what happens. But I don't know what you think about that, Tom.
No. It has been a point of conversation from all sides of things, from both the Sir Jim camp and from the Glazer family, in terms of if they was to stay on. But from what I insisted and from what I knew about in terms of the Glazer family, they had looked at the fan engagement that they had in terms of when they set up the process, and there was a lot of, you know, optimism. There was a lot of positivity in terms of if they was to leave the football club, in the same way that there was from the Glazer family side in terms of the right offer came in for them to leave. There was optimism on both sides, really, from the fan base and the actual owners. And as long as they've got into the process, the Glazer family have looked at it, and maybe in the short, if it was a shorter sort of solution where Sir Jim had proposed to buy them out within a year, 18 months, like a lot of more people would have the stomach for that in terms of saying, well, we've only got one more year, but to come out with 3 and then, it could even be 4. I've even heard somebody reporting saying that it could be 5 because Sir Jim Ratcliffe has a lot of investments, as I've reiterated and said, so he might not be able to buy them out straight away. And then there would be more debt, and there'd be, bank loans and different things like that because he wouldn't want to use his own money. And there's so many different factors in terms of that. But the fan base, and I'll put it very frank for people, the Glaze family don't care. They don't care about the reaction of the Manchester United supporters. They don't care about the fans in terms of if they stay or go, because they look at it as, we've stayed here for 17, 18 years upwards now. Like, we can stay for a couple more. We've lasted this long, haven't we? And the thing with the Glazers is they're never going to be forced to sell Manchester United. That you haven't got a Roman Abramovich situation where you're going to be forced to sell your football club or your asset. It's not going to happen, and that's why, in terms of the Glazer family, they are not bothered about the reaction in terms of that. In terms of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, from what I know in terms of Ineos, any negative opinion or PR that's been pointed across to Ineos, either via direct emails or like people like, freedom of speech and speaking out on, say, a social media platform, for example, on Twitter, the engagement has not been that they don't get a response. They just completely get shut off and terminated. And what I mean by that is Ineos are instigating, blocking Manchester United fans who are opinionating against Sir Jim Ratcliffe or their proposal to buy into Manchester United. And
interesting.
You can say it for what it is. I would look at that and say that's trying to be a dictatorship, really, in terms of my own opinion. You are shutting off the fans in the same way that the Glazer family have shut off, where they didn't ever communicate with the fans. I think it was for upwards of 15 years. They'd never spoken to a Manchester United supporter about what they thought about the club until they set up that independent panel and regulators of Manchester United fans to speak to Joel and Avram Glazer, not directly in person, but via Zoom and different, virtual methods at the time. And I guess you could say there was COVID in place at the time, but, there was a persistence there for something to happen. So in terms of Sir Jim Ratcliffe's case, him personally, as far as I'm aware, when it first became knowledge around him making a proposal to first keep Joel and Avram in, just them two, the reaction in terms of what he got from the fan base was he was stunned by the negative reaction that he got personally. And the reason why he was stunned personally was he saw it as, well, I'm not getting them out right now, but I am getting them out at some point in the future. And he didn't believe that he warranted that much negative reaction, because the reaction that he got from Manchester United fans, he was thinking in his mind in terms of the setup that, well, I would have thought that that's what the sort of reaction I would have got if I was insisting that I was keeping everybody in and that they were staying, full term with me as a business partner. Like, that's the sort of reaction he was expecting in terms of if he did something like that. Not something, as he calls it, minor, in terms of keeping 2 of them in for an extra couple of years. Whether it suits for Manchester United fans or not, that's up for Manchester United fans to make their minds up about.
And to be fair, I guess part of the problem, if you call it a problem, is because of Sheikh Jassim and what obviously he said. Because the biggest issue for me with the Sir Jim story is that if Sir Jim was the only one, involved in the process, and
which he expected, by the way, he expected to only be the only one,
and or he actually laid clear what his proposals were for Manchester United Football Club, then I don't think there would have been such a visceral reaction. I think the problem is that, one, as you said, there Sheikh Jassim came in and basically said, listen, Sheikh Jassim made his proposals clear. I want a full takeover, full ownership, completely. I'm going to be in charge, and I'm going to make the investment into the stadium squad, etc. These are my figures, what I'm going to do, etc. And so Jim didn't do that. All he came out with essentially was that, initially I want an undisclosed amount for the football club, but now plus or minus partial investment, and that's basically sort of it. And like I said, I think if he was the only bidder, that probably would have been fine for United fans, because United fans would have reasoned, well, he's the only bidder, he's the only one who's going to buy us out, but hopefully things will change with his ownership and etc., etc., etc. But with the availability of the Qataris now, it's like we have the opportunity to go in a completely different direction, as opposed to staying the same under Sir Jim, plus or minus the Glazers still kind of being around. So, I get the visceral reaction. It makes sense. Was there anything final? Just thank you for that, Mo. I'll just check one last question, and then we'll if there's any more questions. If there's any more questions, chat, let us know. I'm going to ask Tom one final question, then we're going to bounce some here because we've been going for a while. Let me check. Let's look at the comments. Obviously, shout out to Mansi in the chat. Says Glazers out. Obviously, a lot of people do. Shout out to Kai Felipe. Jassim could give all the money to buy the club for $6 billion. So Jim is Sandra says Jim is offering $3 billion, but only 2%. So he actually is offering more. That's the dumb problem. Yeah, of course, more value. Obviously, a lot of people are pro Qatar, says Jermaine. So I don't really specific questions, Joyce. I'll ask one final question and we'll round up. So, but thanks again for being the show, Tom. Really appreciate it. How, and I guess because we're going to transfer season right now. In fact, exactly, it's tied toward transfer season. Do you think that Manchester United's transfer window is going to be significantly affected by this ongoing process? And which is the first part. And the second part is, of all the rumors that you've heard so far, Jay and so on, how many of these do you feel like are close or that's the interest in etc.?
Well, in terms of your first question, in terms of the sort of resolution around the ownership and what sort of like as you were saying before about the direction for which side the club could go in with the Qatari side or the Sir Jim Ratcliffe side. The indication that I got was that even the offer that had been made, it wouldn't, change the mind of the Glazer family because their mind was that made up. It would take something miraculous to change that. And the only thing that the hope that I can give Manchester United fans, if the Qatari side is what you're wanting, is the word premium wouldn't have been used unless you've put a big offer on the table. And that's why I think, from my personal opinion, and from what I know, if you put the word premium, it's a big offer. But if you put the words but then if somebody's mind's already made up, your mind's made up. That's the only problem. And it takes something big, wow, premium to catch your eye and think, yeah, I'm going with that. And if he's put something in place where he's put this offer, but then he's also prepared to walk away, I just see that as he's set up a way to get out the door if they're not prepared to take it. So he can leave with some face, I guess, in terms of the process. But the ultimate thing that you can say with the whole resolution is this will be resolved within days. Within days, we will have a definitive answer as to what is going on with Manchester United Football Club. And what I mean by that is, by Friday, if Sheikh Jassim doesn't have a response, Sir Jim Ratcliffe has won the bidding process to be preferred to be in the production line to partially buy Manchester United. So from what I've said for weeks in terms of privately being preferred bidder, that will just continue on that same conveyor belt, and it's not going to change. But the indication I had from over an hour ago from someone completely different who's linked to the investment banks within the US, who'd been a different source that we'd used implicitly from the whole process, had then insisted that the Sheikh Jassim offer is going to cause a tailspin for the Glazer family because they don't know whether to stick or twist. The fourth offer, as we reiterated before, they had to think about the fourth offer. And that fourth offer was less than what this offer is now. And that's why I say they're going to have to think about this offer again. But as I've said, and I've given my personal opinion, prediction, if you want to call it that, I just don't think the offer is going to suffice the Glazer family that much to change their mind. And I don't think, and like I said, I think Sheikh Jassim's, opened a door for himself to come out of it with some face to say, well, I bid all that I was prepared to bid. And he's got an exit door by saying that it's take it or leave it. And if you leave it, then I'm walking away. So there is that sort of process in terms of that, and that sort of roundup regarding the takeover. Regarding the transfers, and will that impact the takeover? Will that impact the football club? Well, I'd be a fool to say it wouldn't, because it would. Right now, because you don't really know who's owning the club or what's going on, you can do business, really. You can do business, but you're doing business on a budget. You've got £100 million budget. That's the sort of motto for Manchester United right now. They can do business, but they can't do significant business. And what I mean by significant business is, because FFP regulates Manchester United can only spend £100 million in terms of just right now, that's without selling anybody, then Manchester United are struggling in terms of acquiring all of their targets that the manager wants, especially his priority number one being a striker, and all being Harry Kane, for which Daniel Levy is demanding ridiculous money for. And Eric Ten Hag and Manchester United, board of directors in agreement. Harry Kane's got 1 year left on his contract, and we're prepared to pay the max £80 million right here and now. For a player who's on 1 year of his contract, that's what you call the best deal, really. Because not a lot of clubs are going to do that. Real Madrid, I think anyway, in terms of them, if they want Harry Kane right now, as it's been reported, and from what I heard, especially from sources within Spain, when I'd worked over there with counterparts and colleagues and built some partnerships and relationships there when I was in Malaga last summer, when they specifically stated in terms of Real Madrid's interest in him, Real Madrid have a price that they're prepared to pay for Harry Kane, but they're not going to pay stupid money for Harry Kane, in the same motto as Manchester United. So the takeover saga, when you have a preferred bidder in place, whether it's publicly with Sir Jim as it's expected to be so, or if it's Sheikh Jassim, it doesn't matter who. When you have a preferred bidder in place and those talks and lining out the contract are going through with Sir Jim or with Sheikh Jassim and the Glazer family, when you get to that point there, then you realise where you're at in terms of the whole process and going on with things. So when you get to that point, the takeover saga will impact the transfer window, because you don't know who is signing off on the books. And that's why you can do your business up to the rate of £100 million here and now, but you can't really negotiate a contract with a player long term if you don't know who's signing off on that contract in terms of the ownership, and if they say that's what they want their club structure to be. So, for example, you could sign a Harry Kane, for example. You could negotiate a deal with Harry Kane, and the fees agreed, £100 million. That's the player that you want. But then when it comes to the contract, you could give Harry Kane terms of a 3-year, 4-year contract. But the problem isn't the length of the contract; it's what you offer him over the majority of that contract. Because if you offer him, £400,000-300,000 a week, then you've got a problem in terms of sustaining that, because an ownership model, maybe like a Sir Jim Ratcliffe, might not want to have a player above £250,000 per week, and that goes for any player, which is basically similar to what maybe Liverpool have done, where they have a wage cap on what they offer players, and the wage cap only increases upon performance-related bonuses. So, in terms of the takeover impact in the transfer window, it would do, yes. And in terms of, just players as a whole, Kim Min-jae is Eric Ten Hag's number one centre-back priority target. That's the player that they want. He's got to go away on regimental duty in South Korea with South Korean military. It's familiarisation. It's something that they do within their culture
you're right.
and their ethics and morals. Heung-min Son's done it for Spurs and things like that. So there is there is a process that South Koreans have to go through in terms of that. But because he's a sports athlete and he has a high-profile job, they do it with Heung-min Son. They only have to go away for, I think it's 2 or 3 weeks to do those duties. That's it. Aside from that, if he wasn't a major footballer, he'd be there for 2-3 years. So, there, like you said, there is a process there. The release clause of £38 million, which when you convert it back from euros, from 50 million euros is his release clause in terms of Napoli. And then you have £38 million in terms of pounds for any British clubs that are interested. Manchester United have an option there to pay £38 million for Kim Min-jae in the first 2 weeks of July. Whether they wish to do so or not is another question. And like I said, the longer this takeover drags over, you then don't know who you're getting at that sort of rate and price. So Kim Min-jae would be Erik ten Hag's priority centre-back signing. If Kim Min-jae was snapped up by another football club, like a Liverpool, who are just moving in the market already, and Liverpool are thought to be looking at Kim Min-jae, then Manchester United will turn to alternative targets. Jurrien Timber's an alternative. Axel Diaz, who's come out of today, a lot of the rumours surrounding him, he's a priority target in terms of if they can't get Kim Min-jae, either via the release clause or not. And then in terms of the other positions, I know a big one for a lot of Manchester United fans is surrounding Mason Mount. And I put a lot of people at ease last time, I think, when Chelsea won't accept anything less than £70 million, even though he's on 1 year left on his contract. But Manchester United are not paying £70 million for Mason Mount with 1 year left on his contract, when he could theoretically stay at Chelsea and another year. He's still be 26 years old. He's got plenty of time left in his career, and you can get him for free. In the same way with Harry Kane, wait a year, buy a younger striker and make do with, for now, like a Højlund, for example, and then you maybe transition Rashford to play number 9 for that one season, and you try and just get by. You can get Harry Kane for free in the summer, albeit he's 30, but you've waited. You've saved £100 million on a player that you didn't really want to pay that sort of money for anyway. And then ultimately and overall, you then go to Erik ten Hag's priorities and principles. Number 9 is what he wants. He would like 2 midfielders. I've always insisted upon watch what happens with Adrien Rabiot. The only problem with Adrien Rabiot is, as I've said, with the takeover, you can't dish out a wage, and Adrien Rabiot would want a lucrative wage package to come to Manchester United. So, like I say, that deal, it depends upon the wage. And obviously it's a free transfer, so you're not really messing about and putting in as much hard work as maybe thought after. But other players like midfielders that Erik ten Hag looks upon, like if Chelsea don't drop that valuation in Mason Mount, they're going to go elsewhere. Because Moses Caicedo, Brighton want £80 million for him. Manchester United are actively looking at Moses Caicedo. They're looking at Declan Rice. They're looking at different profile of midfielders. But primarily what they wanted was, if they were going to target 2 midfielders, they wanted, how can I say, a Premier League midfielder, and they wanted a European midfielder. So they wanted somebody who already knew the league. So someone like a Caicedo or Rice fits the bill, obviously. And then somebody who is coming from abroad, but is still a quality marquee player. A Rabiot, for example, has European experience. He's played in, Italy. He's played in France. He's played in different leagues, Champions League, highest level, France international team. So he's got experience behind him. So that's the process there. But like I say, the way that Manchester United do business this summer won't be dictated upon by the takeover, although it will impact it, because you don't know who you can sign off on a contract with. It will be affected by how many players and how much money Manchester United can generate back into the football club. And if they don't generate, I would say 80 to 100 million pounds in player sales, I don't think Erik ten Hag's going to have a very good transfer window, if I'm being completely honest.
So agreeing, Lucky Singh's person chat, but I don't know if maybe it's on Twitter. I'm not sure, because I'm not going to say, because Lucky Singh says this just came out. No preferred bidder. No preferred bid after Sheikh Jassim much improved bid. Is this something like? Is this something that's? Are you seeing anything on Twitter or any of your sources, Tom, that this has come
No,
out
no,
now?
no, no. Well,
No.
the only thing I'm going to say is, if I prefer, whenever the Glazer family have made an announcement or like something's come out, it's always come out on a Friday. That's the only thing I'll always say. When there was when every single deadline that they had for the rounded bids, first, second, third, you can go back and verify and check it. Every single one of them was on a Friday. A Friday deadline. When there was the report that came out from, I think it would have been Mike Keegan, when he put an article out about Sir Jim Ratcliffe was the front runner because he'd valued Manchester United more than Sheikh Jassim had at 50%. When he'd put that report out and everything, there was obviously circumstances because it was a different time then. Obviously, a lot of what's happened now hasn't happened then. Vi saying that there's a preferred bidder, really all a journalist is doing, and I can speak from my own knowledge and self, is they're just covering their arse in case something changes. that's the only thing that you can say. Like Mike Keegan's obviously the big mainstream journalist that's blown up the Sheikh Jassim improved bid. That's the one who's got most of the public knowledge and news in terms of he was the first one to report upon it publicly. And via doing that, now via saying that there's no preferred bidder going into the final week, well, common knowledge from what I know anyway is Sir Jim Ratcliffe's been privately preferred bidder for weeks, and now publicly they're prepared to go with him. That obviously depended upon before the Sheikh Jassim offer, and then even after the Sheikh Jassim offer, I've heard contradicting stories. I've heard Sheikh Jassim from, like I say, about 5-6 hours ago, that the offer will not really dictate anything. And then I heard from an hour ago that the offer, depending upon the figure that is set in stone on the table, and that's the final offer, and it's non-negotiable, if that figure meets the Glazer family's valuation or close to it, they'd be fools not to reconsider. And they reconsidered the fourth bid, as I said, that he put in. So, and this bid is even higher than the fourth. So I think they're going to think about it. So, like I said, the expectation is this Friday, like I say, we will have a definitive answer because Sheikh Jassim has made it very clear. You come in now, you show your hand, Joel, Avram, all six here, Rain, you say what you want to do. You've got a proposal from Sir Jim, you've got a buyout option from me. Pick one. And if you don't pick me, I'm off. See you later.
Fair play, Tom. Fair play. Thanks so much. I mean, just a few comments from Stephanie, obviously, with appreciation in the chat that says, big up, Tom. Sheikh Ariane says big up as well. Big up, lads, especially my boy, Tom. And Andrew Lynch says, hope it's just him. No way, Ratcliffe. So, yeah, I mean, I think we'll round up here, guys. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks again, Tom, for coming on the show again. Really appreciate it. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, I think chances are that we'll probably be live again on the Friday because I suspect that's when the official announcement will kind of be announced. I'd be very surprised if we get anything major between then and now. So, but who knows? So, but thanks for keeping us all and also the Dev2 Studio like updated and just inform everyone as well. Really appreciate it, and obviously with the transfers as well, man. So it'd be great to have you on the show. Just keep us updated with Manchester United's transfer window activity as well, because you're kind of like right now. You're kind of like I know a few trusted journalists that I listen to, and it's basically Fabrizio, Ornstein, and basically you. That's basically it. like there's no other options because too many people posting stuff on Twitter and YouTube for clickbait. So you guys keep it real, So I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no worries, cheers always, and thanks for having me on. And as always, with anybody who's watching either live or post stream, always like, subscribe, and share G's content. So big up as always, G.
Awesome. Yes. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Really appreciate it. We'll obviously be live again. Obviously, a season review for United is coming soon. Probably be next weekend. We'll probably be doing a season review, looking over things. I just kind of wanted the whole takeover stuff to kind of be finished, really, so you could properly digest the season once you've got some finality regarding the takeover and then we can properly kind of review the season as well. So we'll probably be live again with some further the sales news. Have a nice day, everyone, and cheers. Peace.